And welcome everybody to Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard. It is Thursday, September 11th, week 2, Giants-Cowboys, Arlington, Texas. We come to you here as the Commanders are taking on the Green Bay Packers, another NFC East team in action. Of course, urgency is the name of the game for the New York Giants. It's now or never. We all know that with this gauntlet of a schedule that the Giants face, given their shortcomings as a team and their slim margin of error, it's put up or shut up time against the Dallas Cowboys. You have the Kansas City Chiefs on deck in prime time at MetLife Stadium in week 3, followed by a Chargers team led by Justin Herbert, who looked amazing in that first game against Kansas City. And then, of course, after a road trip to the New Orleans Saints, who are not a great team, but not a pushover either, the schedule continues, stays rough, stays terrible for the Giants. Chances at building strong with the Denver Broncos, a couple of matchups with the Eagles on deck. A lot that face the Giants after this game. There's a lot to discuss today. I'm thrilled to be here. This is Talking Ball Live with Pat Leonard. I'm the Giants NFL columnist. I'm the NFL columnist and Giants beat writer for the New York Daily News. We do our live chats Mondays, Thursdays, and of course, post-game. Love those post-game live chats. I will be live again from AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas this Sunday after Giants-Cowboys. I go down to the locker room, talk to the players, talk to Brian Daboll, get the lay of the land. I watch the game in person, of course, and then I bring all of my analysis, information, and updates direct to you guys, usually about 90 minutes after the game ends. I will also be going on Sports Final to break down that big game with Bruce Beck on NBC New York. So you're going to be able to find me everywhere on Sunday, starting from our rival videos on Instagram and YouTube Shorts and the latest fashion of the NFL players. And, of course, for me, wearing my Salaretta, great luxury menswear and tailoring here in Midland Park, New Jersey. Can't do this without my sponsors, my bookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Salarettas. And normally I wait until later in the chat to get into the trivia, but we will be doing our Giants trivia earlier in tonight's live. So get ready, get in the queue, tell your friends if they're running late, jump in. We'll be doing our trivia, and that will be the winner will receive some free Hooks, Rubs, and Spices delivered directly to them. But I have to start out by talking about the Giants offense and where they stand entering this game against the 0-1 Dallas Cowboys, but a team that easily could have beaten the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL season opener last Thursday night. A team that looked like it was determined and not deterred by the Micah Parsons trade, even though that obviously would have shocked any team losing a player of that magnitude. But Dak Prescott is a leader. He had that team ready to go in that game. They fell just short. CeeDee Lamb with some key drops. But here's the deal. Dallas Cowboys, their offense is strong. They're going to score on anybody. What needs to happen, even if the Giants defense gives up some or has a great game, is that Russell Wilson and Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka and the Giants offense, they need to come to play. They need to be able to score with the Dallas Cowboys team that inevitably is going to end up with 24, 27, 31 points. That's just typically what we see out of Dak Prescott when he faces the Giants. And this Giants team, even though it has talent, also has weaknesses in areas that this Dallas Cowboys offense can attack. Javonte Williams with 2 touchdowns in week 1 against the Eagles. But, of course, the aerial arsenal with Jake Ferguson at tight end complementing CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and Dak Prescott is something that's going to have the Giants' hands full. Now, when we look at the offense and what needs to happen and why it looked so poor against Washington and how it can look so much better in Dallas, I got on the phone today with the great Hall of Famer, Kurt Warner. He will hopefully, if we can get it scheduled right, be joining us on a guest episode of Talking Ball with Pat Leonard in the coming weeks. I'm very excited about that. But Kurt was in Brazil in week 1. He was very gracious to, once he got back in the States and he's running all around, to give me a call back and to chat a little bit about the Giants offense. And what the great Kurt Warner told me about the Giants week 1 performance on offense, the dud that they laid, is that he watched that game, only that game, right, to evaluate the way that he felt the quarterback played. And that's how he tries to watch every game, not think about, oh, what do I think of this player before I walk in and watch it? What are my preconceptions? What is my bias? Really tries hard, having been a quarterback, a great quarterback, a Hall of Fame quarterback himself, to enter those evaluations with a clear mind and just say, okay, from 1 to 4 o'clock on Sunday, here's how Russell Wilson and the Giants offense played. How did it look? And Kurt Warner's take on it was that Russell Wilson was not the reason for the Giants' offensive problems. He felt like he made the throws that were there and were available, but that there was not enough opportunity for Wilson to have the type of game that Giants fans were hoping for, that that we were all hoping for to watch in week one, was something better, that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were betting on was going to look better once they brought in Russell Wilson to replace Daniel Jones, who they benched and then released last year. So Warner's take on it was, now he wasn't finger pointing at anybody and throwing anybody under the bus necessarily in this evaluation, but you can read between the lines that what he was saying was, whether it was receivers not getting open in certain situations or whether it was the protection in front of Wilson, Kurt Warner's take on the game was that it wasn't the kind of game to look at and say the quarterback is the problem and the only problem, and if Jaxson Dart goes in, it gets better, so we have to put the kid in now. That was not his takeaway from that game. Now, that's purely just his evaluation of that game and looking at the film and evaluating it as somebody who has been in that spot before. That's not to say that Wilson wasn't without his warts, his problems, his issues. He was off target on some key throws. I personally thought the one that hasn't really been talked about much is that last fourth down in the red zone where Wan'Dale Robinson was open over the middle, and Wilson just completely zipped it, overthrew him. Wan'Dale looked like the ball was by him before he even had a chance to try and reach up and grab it, but already right over his head. So, I thought that was interesting insight from, a great player, somebody I respect as much, if not more than anybody. Like, I think Kurt Warner's film breakdowns and his analysis is more objective than a lot of people who are that close to the league and that tied into the league tend to be, and so I trust that type of evaluation because Warner is not the type of person who pulls punches. Now, that said, who am I to disagree with Kurt Warner? I felt like Russell Wilson was party to a lot of what went wrong in this game. I thought that he looked unable to handle much adversity at all. And I don't think necessarily Kurt is disagreeing with me on that. I think he's just pointing out that, so, maybe Russell Wilson wasn't handling the pressure well, but there was too much of it and it was persistent and it never stopped. And then there were some situations, especially in the red zone, where Wilson might have had an opportunity to get the ball out if anybody was open, but none of the routes uncovered. That I thought that was a worthwhile take because, as I titled this Talking Ball Live, it's Will Jaxson Dart play in Dallas in week 2? I personally believe that Jaxson Dart has a good chance to get in this game. That could be in a package, as we heard about going into week 1. It could be after half if the Giants offense sputters and stalls and looks just as poor as it did last week. And that could be also, remember, you could end up after, let's say at halftime, down 17-3 to the Cowboys. Even if Russell Wilson is just under such duress because of the O-line or whether receivers aren't getting open, whatever the reason is for the benching, when that happens, it will be at least in part because of Dart's mobility and his ability to keep his eyes down the field while also showing that ability to take off and run, but not just run for yards as a rusher, but run with the idea of continuing to try to push the ball down the field. Wilson did a little bit more of that in this first game than I expected once it was clear that he was going to have to do it. And, I did like, as I've said before, I did like Russell Wilson's kind of fake pass and flip, to Tyrone Tracy in the fourth quarter. I thought that was a nifty play. But, when it comes down to it is, as the Giants look at this Cowboys game, they have to be prepared to do a couple things. They have to be prepared to run the ball much better than they did, of course, against the Washington Commanders. They couldn't run it against the Commanders, 15 carries for 30 yards. And then, of course, they also have to be ready to make that drastic change, in my opinion, at quarterback if it comes to it. Because one question I want to know what you guys think as fans of this. One thing that confuses me about the debate of whether to keep Wilson in or put Dart in, I just don't follow what Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll would wait for if the offense doesn't show dramatic improvement. It would be one thing if there were a lot of signs Dart wasn't ready, and if he was the third QB, not the second QB, right? There'd just be a lot of obvious tells and signs that the Giants weren't ready to put him in that spot. But because we know they're ready to put him in that spot, because we know they believe he can handle it, I get why you don't just want to rip it off immediately in week one. You signed this guy, Russell Wilson, to be your starter. You put your offseason faith in him, and you said to yourself, this is the guy who's going to take us there. But if you're Daboll and you're Schoen, I don't fully understand how you could let this season slip away to 0-2, 0-3, 0-4, etc., before putting Dart in, if you think the kid could be the answer, so that, that's what I don't follow that. I mean, if you're Daboll and Schoen and you knew that you had 2026 security and that you were definitely coming back no matter what, I mean, I guess then that would warrant that thought process. But outside of that, I don't really follow it. So I'm curious what you guys think there as well. Reminder, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker and elevate your comment or question to the top of the queue, and I will answer it first or address it first or have it right up next after I'm done talking and answering the previous question. I have a great idea that I've been talking about on here for a while, and I think we may try it for the first time post-game after this Giants-Cowboys game, and that is to have you guys available to be able to call in, quote unquote, on our show on camera by purchasing a certain level of super chat. And so that will continue. Super chats will get you your question elevated to the top of the queue. But post game in Dallas, I'm going to start with this. We're going to set a number of a super chat amount. And if you purchase that super chat, then you will get in the queue and you will have an opportunity to jump on camera with me in this YouTube live and ask your question. We'll chat it up a little bit and then dip out and on to the next one. I do think as long as everybody's respectful and everybody understands that there's a limited amount of time that everyone can hang on and that type of thing, I think that would be a lot of fun. And I think it would be able to give you guys even more of a platform to share your thoughts and your feelings and really your emotions and beliefs after your beloved team plays. Want to continue to talk about around the league too. This is not just about the Giants, obviously, but we are zeroed in on that key game for Big Blue because the season is on the line. So reminder, tail Pat's picks all season long, went 10-6 against the spread in week one. And if you follow me on Instagram and on social media, Daniel Jones, the fantasy sleeper, that was the pick of the week. Daniel Jones went off. I called that, told you all that was going to happen. Hopefully you played some Daniel Jones props on MyBookie. But MyBookie is the best place to tail Pat's picks all season long against the spread, as well as to play in the casino, bet WWE, UFC, big fight coming on Saturday night, as well as just a lot of unique games that most of these other sports books don't have access to. So you're going to go to mybookie.ag. You're going to use the code Leonard. That's my last name, Leonard, Leonard. And that's going to get you a 50% deposit bonus, and you'll get in and be on your way to winning big. Like I said, if you tailed me in week 1, you'd be well ahead right now as the Commanders are driving just before the 2-minute warning, trailing 14-3 against the Packers. Also brought to you here on Talking Ball with Pat Leonard by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural supplement, as you can see over my shoulder, into any drink, coffee, water, tea. Doesn't really taste like anything. Gives you a nice little kick. That's what it gives me, a nice little boost in the morning when I put it in my coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker, as all of you know from Estate 98 being one of our sponsors as well. That'll be back around before you know it. But boomchaga.com is the website. Start feeling the difference today and use that code TalkingBall25 for a special discount on the subscribe and save offer. And of course, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices brings you big, bold Texas flavor, all natural as well, from a diehard Giants fan, supporter of the podcast, Jared, originally from Houston. Whether you're got those flat top burgers going, or nachos, wings, cheesy nachos, spicy wings, whatever it is that you're cooking up, brisket is my favorite. You want to go to hooksrub.com, get those rubs going. There's the smoke and sweetness. There's the midnight. There's just a ton of different flavors, rubs, and spices that are perfect for whatever you're putting on the grill, whether you're at the home gate, at your house in the backyard, whether you're watching on the couch, or if you're at the stadium and you are at the tailgate in the parking lot before going in. Even if you're going down to Dallas, going down to Arlington for the game, bring some Hooks, Rubs, and Spices with you. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Let's smoke some meat. The code, of course, Talking Ball for 15% off. I always say this, but I'm not just saying it because I'm trying to help them sell some of it. I love Jared's Hooks swag. The swag is great. He's got a shirt that just says brisket, brisket, brisket on it. I've got one. My whole family has one. Seriously, in every size. It's an awesome shirt. So go get it, hooksrubs.com. All right. Going to reward those of you who are in here early. We're going to go right to the Hooks, Rubs, and Spices trivia question, and then I will go to the Super Chats. The Super Chats starting with Jay Farries and Pedroza Auto Repair. So here's your Hooks, Rubs, and Spices Giants NFL trivia question. If you get this trivia question correct before anybody else, you will win some Hooks, Rubs, and Spices delivered directly to you. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, let's smoke meat. All right, so here's how we play. I tell you the trivia question. The first person to answer it correctly in the queue wins the prize. All right, so Russell Wilson now has the fourth most rushing yards by any quarterback in NFL history. So that is 5,506. Russell Wilson, fourth most rushing yards in NFL history for a quarterback, 5,506. Who are the other top four quarterbacks in the most rushing yards by quarterbacks in NFL history? So Russell Wilson is 4. I want you to tell me 1, 2, 3, and 5. The other 4 quarterbacks in the top 5 with most rushing yards in NFL history for a quarterback. All right. As we get into the queue here, we start with Jay Farries. Jay Farries, what's up? He says, Pat, you were right about Mara. The Daniel Jones extra year hire and keeping Daboll and Joe Shane was about money. $10 billion team value. Why not go for Peyton, Harbaugh, or Vrabel types? Well, Jay Farries, that is definitely one factor. The money is absolutely a factor. There were even, I told you guys this over the offseason, there were even cuts made internally to Giants staff that were done with an eye on essentially trimming the fat. You know, like when me being in the newspaper business, this is a very familiar, unfortunately, phenomenon. But they were making cuts to certain parts inside of their staff, inside the building, with an eye on trying to trim down to look more attractive for a sale. And so that was absolutely a factor here. Now, I asked John Mara directly if money was a factor, and he said no. But I've talked to other people who have said differently, right? That it's not the only factor, but it certainly was one. this idea that, and this was even before the sale, there was a lot of conversation about the Giants internally all the way up to ownership being tired of having so many different head coaches on the payroll at the same time. Now, that's what happens when you fire people after 2 years or during 2 years. And that's what they did with 3 straight head coaches, right? And so, part of being patient with John Mara or with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, there's the money related to the sale, trying to look attractive in that realm. There's also, from a budgeting standpoint and an organizational standpoint, it's the patience element. And then also, hey, we're giving these guys millions of dollars and we're paying them regardless now because all these contracts are guaranteed for these guys. So, along with John Mara trying to exert a little bit more patience than he has in the past, or a lot more patience than he has in the recent past, then they figure that another benefit of that is not saddling themselves with, let's say, 3 head coaches making multi-millions of dollars at once because, they fire Ben McAdoo and Pat Shurmur. And so when Joe Judge is hired, they're still paying McAdoo and Shurmur. And then when you hire Daboll, you're still paying Shurmur, Judge, and Daboll, right? As the Commanders attempt a very long field goal just before the half, and it is no good. 14-3. It's going to go in to the half. All right. So you said, why not go for Peyton, Harbaugh, Vrabel types? So those guys obviously got different jobs at different times over these last several years. But Jay, I mean, this is not the attractive job it used to be. All of these different candidates are different situations, but by and large, people are much more wary of the Giants situation than they ever were in the past. Whether it's the rumors or the knowledge that people have of, whether it's potential meddling, if they just looked at how coaches were handled here and how coaches were thrown under the bus for bad general managers. Look at the Dave Gettleman era there with Shurmur and Judge. And then, you have also the financial element, John Harbaugh and the bargain that guys like him and Sean Payton were driving from a contract standpoint and how much money they command. And then, Harbaugh also and Payton, these guys are really strong personalities. They will take over your building, and that's why you're hiring them if you're hiring them. But the Giants have a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and so, they prefer the setup that they have now. A general manager who cuddles up to ownership, a coach who theoretically is aligned and collaborates with that general manager, but also obviously that doesn't always work, as we've seen, as it's transpired here from, or I should say that's the ideology, but then in practice, of course, people are human and things go wrong and relationships change. But this is the setup that the Giants generally have preferred over the recent years. And so that's part of the reason why it's not an attractive job to some of these candidates. And then there's also a lot of factors internally, and, people talk. So these coaches talk around the league, executives talk around the league, and the Giants have a reputation for how they've handled things over the recent years. Pedroza says year 4 and Daboll still looks unprepared for any game. Players leave the Giants and strive with other teams. Clearly, this is a head coaching issue. He is certainly one of the issues. There's no doubt about it. I believe that we are way past. Well, it looks like the Packers just attempted like a gazillion yard field goal. What was that? It hit off the crossbar. So I think what startles me, Pedroza, is not just, like you said, not enough answers from the head coach. What startles me is how do they come out so poorly against their week 1 opponents every year? Like, if there's anything that coaching can impact, it's that first game where opponents don't know what you're incorporating that's new from the previous year. They don't have an exact sense of how you're going to use your new personnel, how you're going to evolve either as a play caller or how your roster has evolved. There's so much unknown. And so as a head coach, you also just have so much more time to prepare. And I do not follow how this head coach so consistently has no answers in the first game of the year. It's like you've had ample time to watch tape. You've had ample time to create an advantage. I mean, for them to go through an entire offseason needing to have a better offense, and the first time they're in the red zone, run basically a trick play to try to throw the ball to a fifth round rookie offensive tackle. I mean, what the hell are we doing? You know, what the hell are we doing? All right. Reminder, please hit the like button while we are live. That helps tell more fans out there that we are here. And please subscribe on our YouTube channel, PL on NFL. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, thanks so much for being here. Please try to catch us next time live on YouTube. PL on NFL is the handle on YouTube. PL on NFL. That is my handle everywhere on social media except for X. On X, I am P Leonard NYDN. All right. Let's go to John. John, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. He says, sorry if you covered this, but the season just started. Why is Dex and Abdul on a snap count? Best players should be on the field all the time and can rest when the team is up. The inside linebacker position is an utter joke. Good question, John. Good observation. So I'll start with Dexter. Congratulations to Dexter Lawrence, first of all, on he and his wife having their first baby. That's exciting. That's great. A great thing. So very happy for him. So football wise, I've been telling you guys this for a while now that Dexter Lawrence wasn't playing a lot of football at practice from what I could see. And it was kept quiet throughout the offseason, but it became clear that Dex has really taken a long time to ramp up from that dislocated elbow last season. And what has happened now is, of course, he was healthy enough to play the snaps that he played in this first game against the Commanders. But he was not even close to his true self. He commanded almost 70% double teams on the snaps that he played. But he had a very minimal factor on this game, a very minimal impact on this game. And that is because he's still working himself into playing shape. He is not in the same kind of playing shape that you're used to seeing from Dexter Lawrence because of this slow build-up back from the dislocated elbow. I don't know what to attribute it to, the fact that, like, even with that elbow, how are we here that in week one, Dexter Lawrence is not at his top level? I'm not sure. I've poked around those details. I asked Dex about it during the summer. He said that he was where he was supposed to be and scheduled to be, given the elbow and everything that happened late last season. So he said, I'm on schedule with where they told me I needed to be and should be. So that's from his mouth. That's what he said. But that's related. That's what that's related to. That's not like we don't want Dex on the field as much or we're trying to keep him fresh. That is let's work Dexter into the workload that he's used to when he can handle it, and let's get him there. And you could see in the first game against Washington, they were rotating heavily. So he would play a drive, sit a drive, play a drive, sit a drive. Or really what it ended up being is because every drive that he was out, Washington was moving the ball pretty easily on them. So it became play a drive, sit the start of the next drive, and then come in late in that drive in the red zone, right? And then in the second half, it felt like, to me, watching the game is how I remember it, is that it felt like he was on the field more and not really coming off the field as much or that much at all. But like I said, commanding double teams still helps the team, still helps the D-line. It did free guys up on 2 of their 3 sacks in the game against the Commanders. So there were one-on-one matchups that helped them out and helped them get a sack on Jaden Daniels because Dex was commanding double teams. But, of course, you're used to him being the game wrecker, and you need him to be the game wrecker for them to be the defense they want to be. So that's something to continue to watch. You don't know how many games it's going to take him to get there, but that's something to continue to watch. That's a very good observation by you, John. As far as Abdul Carter goes, talk to him today. He said he's willing to play wherever they want him to play. If he had to play more off-ball linebacker, that would be fine with him. He'll play wherever they line him up because he said obviously he used to play that position. going back to Penn State before he switched over to edge rusher in his final year. So he's comfortable with that if they ask him to. He played 38 defensive snaps, 5 at off-ball linebacker, and 33 on the line at different parts of the line. That was week 1 against the Commanders. I would expect him to play more snaps on defense. I would expect him to play more snaps off ball because, as you just addressed, the inside linebacker position is a concern with Micah McFadden on injured reserve out long-term after right foot surgery, on a scooter with a boot. And then Demetrius Flanagan-Foles. He's not the immediate backup to McFadden, but he's in that rotation behind Darius Muasau. And Flanagan-Foles hurt his calf in practice on Wednesday, so he may not be available for the game. So that's 2 inside linebackers down. That's a position that Carter can play. I'm not saying that he's going to play there all game and that's going to be his position and his only position. But I am saying that I think given the matchup, given trying to get your best 11 on the field, like you said, and just have your best players on the field, and the fact that he's played there before and practiced there at times before for the Giants, I would think that he will be used in that way at times in this game, or I should say more than at times this game, but more often than he was in week 1. All right. Thank you, John, for that. Coach G says Daboll needs to step down. GCN says, Pat, when the Giants are down 28-0 at halftime, Dart will be the starter for the second half and the rest of the year. D-Rock says Daboll made Josh Allen. Don't ever forget it. D-Rock, I'm going to respectfully disagree there. Obviously, you can't take away the success that Daboll had with Josh. They were a part of all of that. And that is how Daboll got this head coaching job. But Josh Allen certainly seems to be thriving on his own right now as well. And that is the lone example of Daboll unlocking a quarterback like that. Joe, what's up? Joe says, Pat, you were all over New York sports radio. Seemed like every show used your 2 questions about Dart going in or starting, then the follow-up about Daboll not answering the question. Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I appreciate that. I would say this. We all have different things that we do well or focus on game days as reporters or whatever. Everybody brings, value and something to the table or tries to. And, I would say this for those of you who want to be reporters or just interested in the business and how it works in general, or like listening to that on the radio, that's just a good example of understanding what the top story of the game is, because it is very challenging in the moment. Again, we're humans, right? So it's much easier to sit on the couch and say, this is the story tonight. And a lot of people can't even do that, right? Because there's so much going on. But it's a lot easier even to do that than to when you're inside of it, like you're standing there in the locker room or in the room talking to Daboll, or you're in the stadium, you can feel the crowd, you can sense the energy, you can sense the frustration from the losing team. Guys are getting injured, guys are banged up, they're putting their bodies on the line. There's a lot of, and then if the team has a terrible loss, tensions are high. If the team has a great win, everybody's like popping and coming apart at the seams, and the energy is high for a different reason. And so it's our job, my job is in that moment is to cut through all of the noise and all of the 50,000 things that happen with the team and in the game and even around the league as we're tracking that, and to get to the matter of what's the story today and what's the top story. And so that's good to hear, Joe. I appreciate you saying that and pointing that out. But that's really where that comes from. That's kind of like identifying that, okay, 50 things happened today, but what is the story? And what's not only what is the story today, but what is going to be the story tomorrow? All right. And then ultimately, I got Daboll to, or I didn't get him to, but my line of questioning, along with others, led to Daboll saying, not committing to Russell Wilson, and that story becoming the story, right? Giants 83, what's up? Giants 83 says, was the first year Brian Daboll all fool's gold? We have been free falling ever since. I just don't understand how you go from coach of the year to completely incompetent. Right. So yes, it was fool's gold, Giants 83. Though Daboll and the Giants deserved credit for that success. Like they earned it that year, the same way they've earned the skepticism of what's happened in the last several years. I consistently say this and point this out, but that was like a staff award. Like Daboll won the award, but what they did so well that year, first of all, Wink Martindale is a way better defensive coordinator than a lot of people give him credit for. His impact on that team was unquantifiable as far as how he took the roster that they had. And it was a roster and a list of personnel that the Giants expected nothing from, really, on both sides of the ball, including defense. And Martindale's ability to help control games, right? Beat Lamar Jackson, right? And also Martindale, Daboll, Kafka, they complemented each other on how they approached games together. So that doesn't mean like it might have been, okay, the defense is going to play the game this way, so the offense now has to adjust and attack this way. Or it might have been, hey, the offense has limitations. Here's how we have to attack, or here's how we have to protect our quarterback or our line or whatever this game, and we're going to run it more than we throw it, or whatever the case may be. And then the defense says, okay, we'll adjust to that, and then we'll attack like this. Okay, we'll be more aggressive today. Oh, okay, we'll try to keep everything in front of us today and then target strategic blitzes, right? Those types of things. But it was a full staff effort. It was cohesive. And remember, even the second half of that season was ugly for the most part, right? They get the playoff win. They had the Indianapolis game, but the Eagles playoff game, holy cow, man, did they get smacked in the mouth. They only won 3 of their final 10 games that season, 3-6-1 down the stretch. And after that 6-1 start. And so they got out hot. I think the thing that Daboll deserved the most credit for that season was how he coached the first game. Again, they started slowly. And you remember he was yelling at Daniel Jones on the sideline about the interception. It wasn't going well. But the way that he stuck his neck out, put it all on the table and on the line at the end of the game to ride with his best players, to ride with Saquon Barkley, going for 2 at the goal line, that energy and that confidence and that approach, that aggressiveness, like the players really could get behind that and buy into like this works, And so they rode that wave a little bit. And that's what he deserves credit for that. And what Martindale contributed that they don't have the same kind of advantage on the defensive side anymore. That is the dramatic difference between 2022 or really the first half of 2022 and anything else, as Deebo Samuel takes the opening kickoff in the second half out to midfield. Nice return there by number 1, Deebo. Giants 83, I hope that answers your question. I do think that they struggle to create a coaching advantage on game days. I hope that answers your question on like how they've slipped, because there were things that Daboll and the staff did well, but remember, his handling of his staff is part of his undoing, right? They haven't been able to retain a running back coach really any year to save their lives. They've fired coaches and coordinators, scapegoated coaches and coordinators. Martindale resigned because of how poor the dynamic was. Joe Shane was on headsets listening in to the coaches' communications to double check everything was okay that year. Mike Kafka was not treated well. That had play calling ripped out of his hands, both for Daboll and for the quarterback coach at one point in Dallas, actually, as they go back to the scene of that crime. That handling of the staff really has brought them to a position where it's a situation that not a lot of people are eager to jump into. Scott says, thanks, Scott. Scott says, what is the biggest reason for the total lack of offense? Is Daboll getting badly outcoached? It seems like we aren't making good in-game adjustments. 2 phrases I heard from people today that rang true to me. One person said that the Giants were too predictable on offense in the first game. And another person said that they lacked creativity on offense. So those are two ways of saying the same thing, that not enough caught the defense of the Commanders by any kind of surprise or created or capitalized on any kind of mismatch on the field or isolated somebody for an advantage, like the way Cliff Kingsbury isolated Darius Muasau for Zach Ertz's touchdown for Washington in the first quarter. Kafka is obviously part of that, the play caller, Daboll involved in that as well. And, I think so you say, hey, this team needs to be more creative, but then it almost feels like, or not almost, it feels like going to the point where you're targeting a rookie right tackle on the goal line when you're trying to just score a touchdown for the first time in the season after being one of the worst offenses in the league last year. Like, that's getting too cute. That's not creative. That's overthinking it. And so certainly Kafka was telling us today that they thought they had some kind of action and ability to take advantage of something they felt like the Commanders were going to do to adjust. And that's why they thought that was going to work. But, you just want to see better execution and, a smarter approach to isolating the weaknesses of the opposing defense and then capitalize on that. Now, I have said I do think Malik Neighbors is below 100%. He was upgraded today to a full participant, so that is encouraging after being limited the day before. But he didn't look right to me in that first game, so I'll be interested to see where it goes from there. Is he getting badly outcoached? Yes, the Giants did get outcoached in the first game, but I thought their players on the field also got whooped at some key spots. Like Daboll specifically mentioned the line of scrimmage as the problem on offense. I think it's no secret that everybody on offense did poorly, starting with the offensive line in that game. But like I said, plenty of people who watch that film are wondering why the receivers aren't creating enough separation and getting open. I think that in-game adjustments, I think the Giants coaching staff, without Martindale now into the second year of that, they are not a coaching staff who is going to give them a dramatic advantage against many staffs that they are facing in the league. You could actually pick a game like the Giants Commanders based purely on who the coaching staffs were. And even though the Cowboys staff is a new one with Schottenheimer as a first-year coach, Eberflus, coming back down to earth after things went wrong for him as a head coach in Chicago. Those are two guys who know what they're doing, veteran at offensive football and defensive football, and who are, at least in Eberflus's case, I think is a better coordinator than a head coach for sure, like unquestionably. So I view this as a coaching advantage again for the opponent. All right, let's get back into the queue. Thanks for all the super chats, keeping us rolling here. GCN says, Pat, Daboll seems subdued in interviews. He answers your questions, called you by name, calmly answering. Looks like he knows they are both gone after this year. Commanders miss another field goal. So, GCN, I'm glad you brought this up because, Daboll has done, the names, says people's names, things before. What stuck out this week on Wednesday especially was, so last week against the Commanders, he stands up there on the first practice day of week 1, and he basically delivered like a 10-word opening statement. It was like typical Wednesday for us. We're in pads. Here we go. What questions do you have? And that was it, right? Everything was terse. Everything was, buttoned up. It was, we're not going to be open. We're not going to share much. Oh, you'll see who won the starting corner job on Sunday. You'll see who won the right guard spot on Sunday. Every player that you want to know about, you'll figure it out on Sunday. He comes out this Wednesday, delivers like a 4.5-minute opening statement talking about the Cowboys game, reflecting on their staff, evaluating what their team does well. Took a shot at Saquon, averaging only 3.3 yards per carry. um, against Dallas under the guise of complimenting Dallas's run defense. And you're standing there saying to yourself, what is going on here? But this happens when coaches know that the end is near. They start to buddy up to media. It's not uncommon. Pat Shurmur did it at the end here as well, like just becoming more friendly and open in those press conference settings. That's how I view this, is like he knows that, he hasn't helped enough people, or that he wasn't handling things in the friendliest way. And now you realize your back is against the wall and maybe it's time to change your tune. But usually when coaches do that, it's too late. Because really, as we all know, it doesn't matter how they treat me or anybody in the media. What matters is whether they win games or not. It's all that matters, And that's all we want. We just want wins, competitive football, relevant football at the end of the season. That's what we want. So, so along with that, Malik Neighbors' press conference, where he was rationalizing, describing, and, explaining his sideline behavior, talking about how he has to be more accountable, be more aware that the cameras are on him and all that. That was definitely born out of a conversation with Daboll. It felt like Daboll did a lot of managing of the Giants' messaging, optics. I don't know if that went above Daboll, right? But it certainly felt like coming out of a disastrous week one for the Giants in every way, public relations wise, keeping the quarterbacks under wraps, football wise, in how they performed. It definitely felt like people inside the Giants, definitely Daboll, maybe others, had a different idea of how maybe they should approach week two and represent themselves in week two. Now that, their plan is off to an inauspicious start. Let's see. Joe points out Josh Allen got better after Daboll left. Coach D says Allen is the only reason Daboll hasn't gotten fired from every job he's had. He needs to grow a pair and quit sabotaging the team. Antonio says, are Slayton and Nacho all right? No indication that they are not. They were both in the locker room after practice, not hiding anything necessarily. We didn't know that they were hurt or had been limited in practice when we saw them in there. I will say this, like they were, Daboll suddenly, like I said, has been forthcoming about things, including injuries. And prior to practice, he said that other than the names that he mentioned, that was it. There was nothing new. And so that's how we know that Slayton and Nacho stepped out of practice because those injuries cropped up today. So, when you list Slayton as limited with a groin, it could be, something's nagging at me. I'm just going to hold back, take a precautionary measure. And so they list you as limited with a groin, but it doesn't mean that you're hurt. It just means that you're saying, something's tightening up. I'm just going to take it easy. And, same with Nacho being limited as well. But it's not nothing either, because the fact of the matter is we don't know exactly what's wrong and what level, those injuries could or have risen to. But there didn't seem to be any level of concern in the locker room when we walked in. Here's a Giants injury report. So Micah McFadden went on injured reserve. He has the right foot surgery on the scooter with a boot on, and you won't see him for a long while. Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver, he did not participate on Wednesday. He was limited today with an ankle. Now, interestingly enough, the Giants claimed Xavier Gipson, the returner who was just cut by the Jets, off of waivers. Of course, we know that Wan'Dale Robinson, in addition to having a team-high 6 catches as a receiver on offense for the Giants, also handled kick return duties for them. I think he had 2 returns for 41 yards. But he is now banged up with an ankle. He was limited on Thursday, so he participated on Thursday, was limited. But if a guy's going to be a huge part of your offense, having him on kick return as well, and he's undersized, that's dicey, right? That's hard to keep those guys healthy, right? So maybe Gipson ends up stepping in there. I don't think Gibson's claim is a good sign at all for Amir Smith-Marset. I will say that. So Wan'Dale's tracking to play in this game, according to Daboll, said he should be okay, but something to watch. Andrew Thomas limited participation. So he did not participate Wednesday, was limited today, Thursday, with the foot. This continues to be a concern. I, at this moment, don't expect him to play in this game as well. Sitting out on Wednesday was a bad sign. Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, inside linebacker, hurt his calf in practice on Wednesday, so he was limited yesterday, then didn't participate today on Thursday. I wouldn't expect him to play in this game either. Neighbors, good news is Neighbors went from limited on Wednesday with a back to full participation on Thursday. Wouldn't shock me if he was downgraded back to limited on Friday. That's a pretty typical thing for him, is either to sit out Fridays or be limited. But based on him being full on Thursday, wouldn't shock me if they had him off the injury report altogether. And then Nacho has a foot issue that he was limited with today. So like I said, we know that that's something that happened in practice today, as well as Slayton's groin was limited. Now, Giants might get some advantage on the other side. The Cowboys, Deron Bland, their corner, is out multiple weeks per ESPN with a foot injury he suffered on Monday's practice. And so he will not play. Not a lot of experience behind Trayvon Diggs and Bland and Kyer Elam, who they got from the Bills. So there will be some youngsters on the back end at times, maybe for the Giants to attack. Malik Hooker, the safety, limited with a foot for the second straight day, but looks like he's going to play. And then Wanye Thomas, backup safety, did not participate, but that was for personal reasons for the Cowboys. All right, let's see. Let's get back into the queue. I think we have another super chat. All right. We got Joseph Wilcox checks in, says, Pat, you have all the right in the world to ask the tough questions. They are what the fans want to ask. So you do that for us. Also, Daboll is resting on his Josh Allen laurels. Tired of hearing about that. I appreciate you saying that, Joseph. I agree with the Josh Allen thing, first of all, as we've talked about. But also, it makes me feel supported, and it makes me grateful for this community when you pay in with a super chat to say something like that, because I said this on a live chat maybe a couple weeks ago, but there have been times for me, including, some of these days here and certain interviews here, where you just feel like if it's always the same couple people asking the difficult questions, that there are fans out there who do appreciate that. But if you're always the guy or one of the couple people or handful of people asking those questions, it becomes very, very tiresome. And also it starts to feel at times like you have a target on your back, because there's people either in the Giants building or fans out there, or even some other people who are just hanging around those press conferences who are snickering, side-eyeing, talking behind your back, trashing you to other people, trying to smear your name, those types of things. It's a public business. So, I mean, listen, I'm not digging ditches here. I'm not, I don't mean to whine, because there's plenty of other jobs much more difficult than this one, but I'm very grateful to do it. But my point is, in those moments, asking those questions, it puts the light and the spotlight and the camera on me. It puts the target on my back in certain ways. And so it's good to feel and believe and know that you have my back. And I do appreciate that, Joseph. Thank you. All right, let's check it out. Try to get through the queue here. GCN says you need to call BT. You need to call Sal of BT and Sal and teach him how to gamble. Hit a parlay going. Allen rushing yards went down by 8 yards after kneeling 3 times to set up the field goal and lost the bet. Oh, that's a tough break. That's called a bad beat. Dan says, Pat, do you think there's a chance that Daboll makes it past week 6? I would say yes, because of Jaxson Dart, because we just don't know how long Brian Daboll has if Jaxson Dart goes in and looks good, or if the Giants are just going to let him see the season out with Dart. is Mara leaning towards giving them 2026 regardless, just to try to see the quarterback plan through? Given how Mara treated last 3-14 season and how he brought them back, it's hard to rule out anything. But I do think that given what the schedule looks like and how the team looks, if the Giants don't improve their results quickly, then Daboll will not last the year. That's what I think. But again, like I said, the wild card is Jaxson Dart comes in, and even though the Giants are losing, he looks really good. So then what? Health and wealth to all, says H-Town. Thank you, H-Town. GCN says, excellent work, Pat. Kurt Warner is the best. I'm waiting for his study ball on Wilson. Mando says, why is Theo Johnson starting over Bellinger? We are witnessing 4 years of horrible roster management. Well, they really liked Bellinger once upon a time, too. And Daniel did struggle blocking at times, particularly with holding in some key situations. If you remember, what was it? His second season, I want to say. He had like 5 or 6 holds, and it felt like 4 or 5 of them, or almost all of them, were always, holding penalties that were getting big plays called back. So it was like the Giants would scratch and claw, then they'd finally get a big play, and then the play would come back because Bellinger held somebody in the backfield or whatever it was. And so I like Bellinger a lot. I think he has more to offer as a receiver and is a better athlete than Theo Johnson is. Running, snagging the ball with the ball in his hands. I mean, Theo Johnson's more of a specimen, but Bellinger is no slouch there either. I'm with you. I mean, the organization's super high on Theo Johnson. He also looked good at times in training camp when they drew stuff up for him, but he needs to perform when the chips are down. H-Town says Packers fly to the ball, multiple hats on the ball. Mara signed the blank check to bring Jeff Hafley to become the head coach. Giants must get back to smash mouth football. It's the only way. Hafley is the D coordinator of the Packers. Hey, if you're going to bring a D coordinator in to be your head coach, I'd rather Martindale, bring him back from college. Why not? Let's see. Ben says we need new coaches, and it starts with the head coach. Jay Farry says, I use Hook's spices, and I love them. Cajun red and smoking sweetness are my favorite. Respect. All right. All right. Looks like Dan Orthside is the first person to win the Hooks, Rubs, and Spices trivia question that we dropped early to reward the diehards who were in here first thing. I have Dan Orthside getting Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick, Cam Newton, and Randall Cunningham as the other top rushing quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, first all-time, 6,200. Michael Vick, 6,100. Cam Newton, 5,600. Russell Wilson, 5,500. And Randall Cunningham, 4,900. Congratulations, Dan. Jared from Hooks, Rubs, and Spices will take care of you. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to direct message me, Dan, on Instagram. PL on NFL is the handle. You're going to send me your full name, your address, and your email. We'll get that over to Jared, and he will send you some free Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Congratulations there. At Jay Farry's, honestly, as a diehard fan, it looks like you got 3 of 4. I think you deserve a little bit of love, too. So send me your info on Instagram. PL on NFL is the handle. Send me your full name, your address, and your email, and we'll get some Hooks, Rubs, and Spices out to the both of you. Jared, what's going on? Says, hey, Pat and Chad, how's it going? Good luck to all on this. Appreciate you. Let's see. We got yeah, Michael, nice work. You were participating there as well. Good work there, and I appreciate you always being here. Let's see. Hook says, we didn't need Gibson at all when we want dependable players. Well, that's why I think that might be related to Wan'Dale Robinson, his usage, right? Having him on both kick and as prominently featured as he is in the offense. You're trying to keep these guys healthy. You're trying to use them appropriately. It's just a lot that they're juggling here, and they're putting it all on the line. But I've consistently said too, when I picked this team to struggle this year, despite some of the optimism, they really do have such a slim margin for error. And keeping these players healthy, the key players, the ones that they lean on the heaviest, is something the Giants haven't been able to do. Let's see. Kylo says, do you think Dart goes in after halftime? Just woke up to watch. The snooze got me. My bad, Pat. Kylo, what's going on? Do I think Dart goes in after half? Yes, I do think that Jaxson Dart, if the Giants have a first half like they had in week 1, then I think you see Dart in the second half. Even if they don't, like here's one thing I was thinking too. I know they don't want to create the quarterback controversy before they have to or whatever, but listen, it's already here. So that's silly to think that it's not. Secondly, how about this? How about them having and leaking that they have a Jaxson Dart package in week 1, and then the rookie that they put on the field in a strategic red zone situation to score is Marcus Bowe, a rookie tackle that you drafted in the 5th round, not Jaxson Dart, the quarterback who can run and has dual threat ability and is tough as nails. Like, what are we doing? Here's one thing I will say about this game. A key to this game, I mentioned earlier, I think the Giants do need to be able to run the ball, establish the run, obviously, given how they ran the ball poorly in the last game. I think Cam Skattebo sees a lot more action in this game. He had 2 carries for 3 yards in the first game against the Commanders. 2 carries for negative 3 yards in the first game. And he only played 8 offensive snaps. I believe that to get the running game going, one thing that Brian Daboll is going to do is he is going to lean heavier on number 44, the rookie running back, and we'll see where it takes us. But I do expect Skattebo to be more of a factor in this game, for better or for worse. Let's see. All right. Intel says they need to start Dart. Michael says, I said the same thing. We were 3-14 last year. Who the hell does he think we are trying that play at the 1? It was so dumb. It was unbelievable. The game almost became a joke after that. Let's see. Stop hoping and wishing. Just start the kid. Jacob, what's going on? Great to see you. Jacob Petruzzi, he's back. He says, smack that like and sub button for the best reporter in the business on your way in. Thank you so much, Jacob. Great to see you here. Really appreciate you. Pat, chances AT plays Sunday. I don't believe Thomas is going to play. I'm not optimistic. I guess there's a chance. But I think the fact that he didn't practice on Wednesday tells you everything. Padded practice. I thought that was very telling. And even limited today when he does get on the field. I mean, the bottom line is everything that Andrew Thomas does in the ramp up now is something he hasn't done before. So he's still evaluating how his body responds. Like he even said going into the season, it's still about managing like pain and soreness tolerance, and that's gotten better, and it hasn't been as painful or as sore recently compared to what it was like a month ago. So he said that is progress, but it still sounds like he's working through it and testing it. So that's concerning. It's very concerning. GCN says, Pat, could Neighbors be favoring his toe and hurting his back? Should have put Thomas on IR until November, 12 months after his surgery. They were just trying to fool the fans. I think they were optimistic on a different timeline on Thomas, and then it changed, and he has kind of taken matters into his own hands as far as protecting his body and only coming back when he's ready, which is interesting. But kudos to Andrew for doing that. Yeah, I don't know if the toe is affecting Neighbors' back, GCN. I think it's more like I just see that as two separate things that he's managing. Jay says Neighbors is 22, played 1 game, no preseason, and has myriad injuries. What a joke. Yeah, Jay notes that this is a Bono to Bozo situation potentially for Daboll, as John Maris said once, that can happen quickly. Let's see. H-Town says Allen is superhuman and MVP by perfecting his craft. Daboll looked like genius with superhuman, but Allen doesn't even turn the ball over now without Daboll, unlike while he was with him. Josh Soul says, hey, Pat, has anyone addressed the Giants' handling of Winston? It feels like he has been strung along the entire time, down to giving up all of his reps for Dart's development to push him to QB3. Yeah, I've talked about it. It's not a popular topic among many media covering the team. I do think it is. I have pointed it out. Now that he is like completely inactive and out of the game planning element of it, it's certainly, on the back burner compared to some other things, namely Jaxson Dart and his development. I will say Winston has been right there alongside of Dart, after these practices, he and Dart out there working together on install and on parts of the offense and on the practice script. So Dart is, I think what Daboll was saying is that even though Dart doesn't take a ton of snaps in practice, he does still go through the practice script afterwards so that Wilson gets the first team reps mostly. Dart gets a handful of maybe first team reps in practice, something Daboll admitted that he does get first team reps at times in practice. And then Winston and Dart are staying afterwards. It does feel like Winston has now more like embraced the idea, like, listen, I'm not really playing here, but I can positively impact this youngster, this young quarterback. And so that's the route he's taking. That's the way it looks. I think it's just like Wilson. I think Winston is here both for what this opportunity can do for him football-wise, but also after football, which I understand and is a smart business move. I have been banging the drum and advocated for him to be a factor in like a competition for who the best quarterback could be for their actual offense. But of course, that has fallen on deaf ears as far as the Giants internally go with making the decision. Josh says, I think he is more interested in the trade after preseason if he knew that all of what Daboll did was to push him to inactive QB3. I am interested to see if they actually get anything for him at some point or if he's really just going to end up on the roster for the long haul. John says it was all Wink and Saquon in 2022. There you go. Does Shane and Daboll make it to the end of the season with a job? I would say Daboll does not, and Shane does, is my guess. John says, Pat, were the trade offer rumors of Evan Neal, Hyatt, and Winston real? How does Shane still have a job if true? Those three players aren't playing. I don't really know. What would you have gotten for Evan Neal or Jalen Hyatt? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The only player of the three of those who would have fetched any kind of meaningful return in a trade offer, in my opinion, probably would have been Winston. Yes, after the first game, Daboll went straight downhill. Division rivals own Daboll. They have the answers to the test. They know the snap count, play direction. Washington just exposed that per usual. Joseph Wilcox says, look what Danny Jones is doing with a good front. They had wide out Pittman on the NFL Network today. He said he looked great right from camp. Joe says, Pat, just like Steve Young said on Rich Eisen, Daboll's offense is 10 years behind modern NFL offenses. Joe calls Daniel Jones Indiana Jones. Love it. This is sabotage, gross incompetence, doesn't explain it, or Daboll is a sociopath, says Coach D. I know everybody's fired up. I get it. Let's see. H-Town says Packers, Chargers, Ravens, Bills, Chiefs, Lions, Rams coaching would have this team at a very high level of play year in and year out. I still think the personnel is lackluster, but I do agree there are coaches out there who could get more out of it. Yeah, Joe says those coaches would also have a good GM. Murphy says you have the Giants fan support for sure. I appreciate that. That guy says 100%. Let's see. GCN says Pat, Green Bay is the best team in the NFC so far. They are dominating the Commanders. Yeah, Commanders, tough sledding here. Joe says this is the reason I read and watch you, Pat. You're realistic about the team and not trying to eyewash the fans. I appreciate that, Joe. Giant says, I'm not asking for wins. What I need to see is a competitive product. Giants games are over before halftime, and I'm sick of it. That's exactly the point. No doubt about it, Giants 83. It's not, like you said, it's not the loss is hurt. It's not you lose a game here, there, whatever. It's consistent losing, and it's being out of games by halftime, watching the team and knowing that they're not going to have answers in the second half or down the stretch, watching the team in week one and feeling like you can see how bad the rest of the season is going to go, watching the team and knowing that they're going to be irrelevant by Halloween. Like all of those things really jump out to you. And that is what wears on you as fans, even as us media around the team. William says the healthy inactives from week one looks like the coach is pointing fingers at the GM. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, Darius Alexander being inactive. I mean, I made it a headline in the Daily News because it was a big deal, but it deserves repeating. Holy cow. Like healthy scratching your third round defensive tackle and you still can't stop the run well enough. Like, man, oh man. Kylo says, where the hell is Tish? He's to blame too. Just sell your half if you're going to be silent and not promote change. Steve Tisch getting older. He obviously vowed several years ago to be more involved, more physically involved in the building. Of course, underwent, unfortunately, sadly, there was, a personal tragedy in the family and health-wise, just at a different point in his life. And so he's there, he's involved, but this has largely, as you've noticed, become just the conversation about John Mara and only John Mara when ownership is referenced. And that's for the reason that, that's just kind of what the dynamic has become. Let's see. All right. Commanders are down 17-3 with 2 minutes left in the third. They're going for a 4th and short. And they just barely got it. I think that was Eckler with an extra push. All right, let's see. That guy says Giants owners have monopoly money. The team to them is like when we play fantasy. Problem is their guy has no idea what they're doing in the league. GCN says they're never selling. The owners can sell the whole team except for 33%, still control the team. All right, let's see. John says Thomas should not play until he gets a full week of practice unless they want to risk losing him for the year. Yeah, very well said, John. I agree with you. And I think, I know, talking to Andrew Thomas, that's what he has said, is that the whole point of this is for him to not come back until he feels like he's not risking re-injury, like grossly. Obviously, anytime you play football, you risk injury, but he wants to feel as assured as he can that he's not going on the field with it in the back of his mind and with his body below 100% and knowing that he's taking unnecessary risk. So that is something that is at the forefront of Andrew Thomas's mind and is coloring his decision here. And it's impossible to blame him on that because they rushed him back from that hamstring a couple years ago, which did him in and cost him several games and helped cost them a season. And then, he had the 2 ankles before where he had to have a second surgery to clean up the first surgery, going back to the start of his career in those first couple years. So he's taking matters into his own hands. This is his life. It's his career. It's his earnings. And I think Andrew's being smart with all of this. And I think that your point about a full week of practice is an important one because this can't be a situation where Andrew goes through limited participation and let's say a handful of real 3/4 speed reps on a foot that's surgically repaired for that Lisfranc injury in his right foot. And then it can't be the first time that he's locking in and playing real, like full contact, nasty football against a defensive line trying to destroy his day. Right? Even in practice, having a full practice where they do, let's say, pads once a week, even that is not simulating what you're really going up against when you're facing the Giants' opponents and what they're trying to do to you on a down in, down out basis. And even just like the not even the physical contact of it, but also remember there is the unknown. What are they going to throw at you? What stunts are they going to send at you? Who's going to line up differently? Who's going to catch you on a blind side at some point, right? That's not your teammate, isn't thinking about your safety and your health. John says also the Giants are a very fragile team right now. I think Dallas puts a 50 spot on them if things go wrong early. totally agree, John. I'm not predicting 50 points, but I'm with John on the idea of where this team is and where things could go if it gets there. Um, I totally like I said this after the game on Sunday in Washington, and I know the Giants were down in the red zone a couple times, so they could have had more points too. But if the Commanders didn't drop, if they caught 3 of their 5 drops and they had 7 penalties instead of 12, they would have won that game 42-6. All right, let's see. Giants 83 says they are fragile. One injury completely derails the entire operation. Other teams have multiple injuries and still function. This team is not constructed right. Ryan Williams says, hey, Pat, I was trying to be optimistic this year, but deep down, I felt Daboll and Kafka is not good for this offense. Neighbors is the only receiver fans can rely on, but Daboll is not doing him any favors. Boring and predictable offense. They need to go. Joe says, Pat, Winston to the Niners if Purdy is out for the season with his turf toe. I think it would be Kirk Cousins to the Niners if Purdy was out for the year, because Shanahan has been trying to get him out there. That would be the fit there. Let's see. JDJ says, I can't do another year of checking out the 2026 mock drafts in September. Please no. Oh, I hear you. H-Town says, hopefully they use neighbors in different positions all over the field, create mismatches or just different looks to create some kind of advantage. Use more motion and play 12 and 13 personnel, tight end, seam routes. Yeah, and so like what I expect from Eberflus is, I mean, I guess you could theoretically travel Diggs with him, but I think more likely you see, a zone with the safety over top, or the corners playing one side with the safety over top. Certainly Eberflus is not going to, you wouldn't expect, leave neighbors on any kind of island. Trayvon Diggs with Deron Bland out. Trayvon Diggs he's their top corner. Now he had his snaps limited in week 1 as he gets back from that knee injury and knee surgery last year. But I think, I don't know if he's going to be full tilt 100% snaps in this game, but I would expect, because Diggs has said all training camp that week 2, week 3, that he would probably be back to full tilt. So they're probably seeing how he recovers. I know he has said that he expects to play more in this game. Thanks for the kind message, Hooks, and awesome seasoning. That's right, JDJ. Nice. Coach D says Daboll can't evaluate talent. Bowen can't coach the defense to its talent. Kafka can't formulate a coherent game plan. They need to quit, and the pressure to be constant and the pressure to do so must be constant and robust. William says if Daboll gets fired and Shane stays, we're going to have to organize a Joe Must Go banner to fly right here in the Talking Ball chat. Yeah, maybe get a pilot's license and fly overhead the stadium. Is that what you're saying, William? Was it you last year? Joe says that Tom Brady said the first game it felt like 100-3, but somehow it was close. It could have been 100-3. Dallas went head-to-head with Philly, Welvin says. Washington looked bad against us and awful tonight. Might get steamrolled on Sunday. I think the Giants are going to get steamrolled on Sunday. But like I said, I think it all starts. Oh, boy. Jaden Daniels getting run down by Micah Parsons going up against a rookie tackle. That was nearly a disaster. Like I said, I started at the beginning by saying I think this is all about the offense keeping up. And even though Kurt Warner and I chatted today, and like I said, hopeful to bring the Hall of Famer onto our show. He's excellent. I don't respect anybody more when it comes to breaking down film. But he felt like Russell Wilson was not, like, he didn't watch the first Giants game and say, Russell Wilson was the problem. Put in Jaxson Dart now. He felt like there were not enough opportunities given what was happening around him, whether it was protection issues, whether it was play calling creativity, whether it was receivers not getting open. But he didn't like what he saw around Wilson more than he was blaming Wilson himself. Let's see. If O-line does block better and Russ still doesn't step up in the pocket or make the right reads, missing receivers or holding the ball too long and isn't productive, do you say Dart should come in second half? Yes. I personally, like I said, who am I to disagree with Kurt Warner and his evaluation? And I'm not, I agree with Warner about, I mean, that offensive line was not good in week one, and the receivers weren't great either. But I felt like Wilson looked like he didn't have any answers himself. I don't have full confidence in him to help them score a ton of points and win games. And I think you should just play the kid. I mean, Dart has already shown that he can earn the confidence of everybody in there. The one missing part and missing element as the Commanders are driving now down into the red zone, and this game could get interesting in the fourth. The one holdup of just throwing Dart into the game is he doesn't throw much with the first teamers. Now, he did go in there in the preseason in games at times with the first team. He as Daboll said, he has practiced at times with the first team sparingly. But as Jaden Daniels goes back to pass, and Zach Ertz is rumbling towards the end zone. Touchdown Commanders, 17-10 early fourth quarter. Here we go. So, yeah, so back to my point. Dart just doesn't have a ton of time on task of throwing the ball to all of the first team wide receivers, particularly neighbors. So that is one thing to remember. But to me, I say that if this doesn't look good, first of all, I think that Jaxson Dart package has to show itself at some point, even if you're not benching Russell Wilson, just to try to create an advantage on offense and try to continue to help light a spark. Give Jaxson Dart a chance to help your team win a game. Also, though, I do think if there's a first half like they had in week one, I do think it's Dart in the second half. Michael says, hey, guys, good questions by all. John, Dallas has weak corners, so any good wide receiver schemes may be a key, and Scattaboo may also be a key. Yes, I do think we see more Scattaboo. JDJ says, who gets more targets on Sunday, Slayton or Illuminor? That's funny. How long will it take for Hyatt or Cam Scattaboo to get more reps and playing time, and why isn't Chapman on the roster? He's the strongest player they have with a motor. He's just undersized and gets moved around. And, he was on the roster last year that couldn't stop the run, so they're just trying other solutions. But obviously their draft pick wasn't even good enough to be active in the first game in Alexander. Scattaboo, I think, will get more reps in this game. They do need to run the ball. Hyatt, good question. I mean, now with Slayton with a groin, Wandale with an ankle, Neighbors with the back. I mean, it's still Bo Collins over Hyatt on the depth chart, as you could see based on their usage in week one, and Collins getting in ahead of him. But no optimism for Hyatt jumping in there and becoming a huge factor, at least for this week, based on what I can see. Guys, this has been an awesome chat, as always. Talking Ball live with Pat Leonard here on September 11th, Thursday night, heading into week 2 against the Cowboys. Like I said, post-game live, Giants-Cowboys from Arlington, Texas, AT&T Stadium. I will be live down there after coming out of the Giants locker room, talking to Daboll, the players, and giving you a first-hand rundown of what I saw on the field, what I heard in the locker room, what the injuries are, analysis, everything inside and out. We also go league-wide. Like today, I'd love to point out some things that stuck out to me in week 1. I thought it was interesting that Sean McVay gave a shout-out to Drew Wilkins, the former Giants defensive assistant under Wink Martindale, who the players and coaches in LA credited with creating some really difficult to handle fronts for CJ Stroud. Even Stroud said after the game for the Texans after that loss that the schemes that they were seeing up front and the blocking that they needed to assign, that it was confusing, that it was something they weren't expecting, and that it got in the way of the Texans creating any kind of semblance of consistent production on offense. So credit to Wilkins there. Obviously has been one of the scapegoats here in New York, but turned in an impressive performance and is already having a positive impact in week 1. Some other people who had strong games this past week, of course, Justin Herbert is on early watch as a player who maybe he is taking that final step to ascend to the level that everyone has him at anyway, even though I, as well as others, shared some skepticism coming out of that that playoff game where he threw what 4 interceptions, I think, against the Texans in the loss last season. But definitely a wow opener against the Kansas City Chiefs for him. Um, of course, for the Giants to rub salt in the wound, unfortunately, Daniel Jones went off, but also look at some of these other quarterbacks. Now, Michael Penix lost, but played well in a loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you have J.J. McCarthy as well with that fourth quarter comeback, charging ahead and beating Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Vikings were on my bookie, my pick to win the NFC North. Green Bay Packers look formidable tonight as well. So nothing in the bag exactly, but you had to like what you see from McCarthy, both as far as how he played and also how the team was reacting to him in the locker room. Great win by the Raiders on the road. That was another team that I had a sleeper. I have them as the 7 seed making the playoffs in the AFC. Long way to go, but Geno Smith is a real quarterback, and they beat the Patriots 20-13. So that was impressive. The Jets, after looking like a team that wasn't able to, squirt a drop of points out in the preseason, put up 32. They still lose to the Steelers 34-32. But Justin Fields showing some moxie. I like seeing Fields talking trash after that game and, basically pointing out that no one believes and that he feels like they're already showing way more than people expected. So that was interesting. We also learned that when you evaluate a schedule, sometimes it's really hard to tell what is what. Now, the Titans did lose to the Broncos 20-12, and the New Orleans Saints did lose to the Cardinals 20-13, but they fought hard and they gave those victors games. The Cardinals with an important win early, as I have Jonathan Gannon as my coach of the year, and the Cardinals winning the NFC West. So that's a good start there for Kyler Murray and the Cards. The Seahawks really choked one away there. That final touchdown that Brock Purdy threw, I saw a Seattle DB right in line to intercept that, really a reckless pass into the back of the end zone, and somehow just waits on it rather than going to the ball, and the Niners escape with a 4-point victory. But I do think the Seattle Seahawks should have won that game, and I like them to bounce back here in the coming weeks. We also have the Detroit Lions. It's only 1 week, but concerning 14-point loss there to the Packers. Could have even been worse. The brain drain from losing those coordinators is a real thing, something to keep your eye on there. I guess I should have started with the Bills-Ravens game, but everyone's talked about that ad nauseum by now. I will say this. John Harbaugh and Zach Orr and, that staff, you have to be able to coach games differently when you're up 15, up 14, down 7. Like, these different situations call for different approaches. And so very concerning that I'll just say it. Like, I think the Ravens are so obviously more physically talented than the Buffalo Bills. Like, from a personnel standpoint, I mean, obviously Josh Allen's amazing and they have some good players. But I just mean they don't have a roster that has any excuse to lose games like this to the Bills. Huge fumble by Henry after having such a great game. Cincinnati fortunate to get out with a win. And Jacksonville, nice win, 26 points, 26-10 over the Carolina Panthers. Good win for Liam Cohn in his first game as head coach. So that's my quick run around the league. If you have any other questions, roll them into the chat now. I guess we'll finish up with a Giants prediction and get out of here as the Packers drop back on 3rd down. Love looks like he doesn't have anyone open, and he completes it for a 1st down. Might be offensive pass interference. This game's getting tight in the 4th. Gotta love it. All right. Let's see. Looks like Joseph is predicting a Giants 21-17 win. H-Town is predicting a loss, but then a win over the Chiefs. Is that what that is? So GV says, wait, what? Slayton is hurt now? Well, he popped up as limited today with a groin. So like I said, GV, he was in the locker room afterwards. I mean, I didn't ask him about the injury or anything. I don't think he hung around today. And I don't think he did like any kind of scrum where he was on camera talking about it. But my point was, Daboll indicated who was going to be out or limited or whatever prior to practice. Slayton was not one of the names he mentioned. So once he pops up on the injury report, it's something that happened today in practice or that cropped up in practice. So he was limited with a groin. So that was the sign. But no comments or insight into him being like, a threat of missing this game or anything. I didn't see anything like that. JDJ says, who ends up returning now that we signed Gibson, the kick returner from the Jets? Also, who would you like us to sign or elevate to replace McFadden? I think it's Muasal on rundowns and Abdul Carter playing more off ball, as we talked about earlier, JDJ. As far as returner, Gibson, I don't know when he factors in there. He certainly is, in my opinion, possibly here in part because Wan'Dale Robinson has that ankle that he's nursing now and also is important to their offense. So, it might be unwise to continue putting him back there on kick returns, and maybe they view Gibson as a guy that can pop back there eventually. Not a good sign, in my opinion, for Amir Smith-Marset on the roster. GCN says Dallas 55, Giants 9. Giants YouTube says Giants were still in the game after the first minute of the game. GV says we haven't beaten Dallas in 9 years and the line is dropping in our favor. Wouldn't be shocked if the Giants hang in here. Interesting. Joe says new power rankings, 32 Dolphins, 31 Giants, 30 Saints. Raven said Lamar had cramps on the last drive, could not run our third or fourth down. Chiefs' weapons are a concern. I can see the Giants giving them a run for their money for sure. All right, guys, this has been awesome. Reminder, boomchaga.com. Talking Ball 25 is the code to start feeling the difference for boomchaga.com. Support our sponsors. Also, MyBookie. MyBookie, the code is Leonard. It's mybookie.ag. Tail all my Pats picks. I did have the Commanders covering tonight, so we will see if they get that done. The Packers are driving and in the red zone. But MyBookie is the best place to tail all my picks. You made money if you tailed all my picks against the spread in week 1. Get there, go to mybookie.ag, use the code Leonard, get a 50% deposit bonus, and start playing today. And, of course, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, big Texas barbecue flavor. I'll be heading down to Texas this weekend for the game. Brought to you by Jared, diehard Giants fan, who owns and operates Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Whether you're home gating or tailgating, Hooks brings award-winning flavor right to your grill, and he's got great swag on hooksrub.com. Follow at HooksRub wherever you are on social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you go. Jared does some great demos and has a lot of great content as well as delicious food. Falling off the bone. Go get it. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Let's smoke meat as the Packers look like they are pulling away for good here with 9 minutes left. Up about almost up after this extra point. It'll be 24-10. Jared says, watching my TCU guy, Savion Williams, on the Packers making plays all over the field makes me sick when I know we had a chance to draft him. Shaking my head. Then we'd have another offensive threat along with Malik. Good call, Jared. Jared knows his stuff. That's why he's here on Talking Ball. That's why you're all here, to get the latest on the Giants and on the NFL. Reminder, Talking Ball post-game live from Arlington, Texas after the game, usually about 90 minutes after the game goes final. And then I think Sunday will be the first day we experiment with maybe trying to get some of you on screen as callers on the chat. Once you purchase a super chat or a super sticker of some level, we will illustrate the rules of that once we kick off that chat. And then we will go, don't know exactly how long, but we will have to wrap at some point because I will also be joining Bruce Beck for Sports Final on NBC New York from the stadium. So looking forward to our post-game live. Get in there early, get your super chats in, and be ready if you want to be on camera to ask a question, similar to like a call-in radio show, trying to turn Talking Ball post-game live into something even more special for you guys starting on Sunday. I'm a Fan says, keep up the great Giant coverage. Good night, Pat. Good night, I'm a Fan. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here. See you later from Talking Ball with Pat Leonard.